Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're going to be doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Overall, this week we had a dynamic where people are starting to get nervous, investors are starting to get nervous with the situation with the Delta variants of the COVID and also other variants as well. We have places in Asia, places in Germany and Europe that are starting to close down again due to the situation with these variants. On Tuesday, the markets fell on Thursday due to the fact that a lot of people are starting to exit a lot more riskier assets. Technically, stocks, for example, are considered riskier than things like bonds, because bonds offer a fixed interest rate. So I don't think the US government is very secure, even though people think so. And what happens is people take their money out of things like Bitcoin and stocks and other assets that are considered riskier, and they put them in things that what they consider to be more secure, like government fixed interest rate bonds and things along those lines. We also have a lot of, I was going to say it in Spanish, preocupación, a lot of, no, I can't even think of the word in English. Worry, yeah. Well, yeah, that way. People are starting to worry now as well. And here in Colombia, we hablar very nice español. So the people are starting to worry as well in terms of the labor shortages and the bottlenecks due to the supply chain. So right now, if you've asked yourself, why are prices going up so much? The government is only saying that the inflation rate is at about 5% or so. My personal opinion is about 30-40%. I'll have them share with you the bag of chips that you buy. You know, when you buy sandwiches, they've gotten smaller, the different brands. Here, for example, as well, in Colombia, I don't know if they're doing this in the US because I haven't looked at the sizes, but a venti and this is, Starbucks didn't pay me to go local, don't buy Starbucks. But a venti is considered a large, right, in Starbucks, and the reason why they call it venti is because Italian, and venti is 20, which means it's 20 ounces. 20 ounces, and the international measurement is 590 milliliters. So here, they're selling the venti, they're not selling it 590 millimeters anymore, they're selling it in 500 milliliters, which means that the 15% reduction in the size of what they're giving you, even though you're paying the same price for it. So you can see that the reason why everything's going up is not only because of the devaluation of the dollar, it's also because we have less people working, which creates a situation where there's less products or less services. If there's less of something, supply and demand, the cost goes up. And then also with the supply chain issues, right? So all this is kind of a perfect storm where we have a situation where the prices are just exploding. Overall for the week, the U.S. stocks were higher this week. They're mostly positive, not by much, but if I'm not mistaken, I think the NASDAQ hit a record high. Overseas market news, the European markets were mostly lower, with Spain taking the win there for the biggest loser of the week. Latin American markets in Canada also mostly lower. Some were mixed, even though Canada was negative 0.19% there. Africa and the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, the biggest loser there, even though overall the Middle Eastern markets were mostly mixed. And then we have Asia and the far East. They were mostly lower as well, with Hong Kong taking the biggest loser there at about 3.53%. Bitcoin and crypto news, the U.S. Justice Department was just slain another criminal, let's call him. He did a $16 million crypto fraud. And this is what I always told you guys about. It's not that Bitcoin is a scam. It's that unfortunately there are a lot of scams in crypto because the market isn't regulated. So they took him off to jail for 15 years. He actually was extradited from Thailand. He's a Sweden national, and he robbed over $60 million in a fraud for crypto. There's also, this is actually fascinating to me because there's two kind of dynamics right now happening in crypto where we have kind of the regulation aspect kind of notching up a little bit, right? But at the same time, we have this news where over a 101 carat diamond was sold literally in crypto. $12.3 million in crypto. So we have the situation where it's becoming a little bit more common, right? Bitcoin and the blockchain, it's starting to kind of expand to other markets. Otherwise, who would pay for a diamond in crypto? But at the same time, we have the kind of regulation aspect. So we'll kind of see what's going to win out here. Maybe they'll both kind of continue to go forward. Overall for the week, Bitcoin is higher this week. It's up 1.60%. Still hasn't recovered, hasn't really made a breakout, as I told you guys before, based on the The price action, it may still go down a little bit more. And if we kind of look at the history of Bitcoin, the last time we had this huge kind of bubble behavior where the market popped and then came crashing down, it took 2 or 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, 3 years from 2017 to make a new record high. So possibly we might have a little bit of a run here where it's going to take a while to reach another record high. In commodities, Tuesday dropped quite a bit after OPEC wasn't able to make a deal, specifically United Arab Emirates, which is the country which you might not know is from Dubai, where Dubai is based. They couldn't agree to the deal, so they're going to go ahead and ramp up production. A lot more production means a lot more supply, a lot more oil on the market, which makes it less valuable, again, supply and demand. So overall for the week, U.S. crude went down in addition to international crude. Precious metals this week, quite a bit of volatility. I was able to get into some of those silver positions again. Gold for the end of the week went up 1.15%, went to about 1,808. And if you guys don't remember, I showed you those gold coins that, I was able to get at about $190 for a 1/10 ounce. So let me just kind of frame this out for you. We had oil go from 1,788 to about 1,808, right? And even before that, if I'm not mistaken, it went down a little bit further. So I was able to buy the 1/10 gold coins at about $190, which relates to 10 ounces. You multiply it by 10 at about 1,900 an ounce. It's already at 1,808 at the end of this week. So you literally are able to invest in something, which I'm not saying you should, because obviously I'm not a trading advisor. I can't tell you where to invest your money. But if, look into it, because obviously gold is going to run a lot higher very soon, and you literally can get it at quite a small premium right now. Consígueme el oro. And silver went down 1.25%. It went to 26.21. That went down quite a bit. The silver miners that I trade primarily right now, when I swing trade, whenever we have these movements in silver, the miners actually overshoot the movement in silver. So if we have a 1% rise in silver, for example, you might have some of these miners that go up by a few dollars, which equates to 10, 20, 30%. Again, do your research. I'm not telling you to invest in these. Obviously, for me, it's been a great investment. But do the best thing that's for you. Definitely not trading advice. Cover our butts there with the regulators. Financial and banking news for fiscal 2021. The U.S. Congressional Budget Office is estimating that the deficit in the United States is going to be $13 trillion. That's 33% higher than what was originally forecasted in February. And the shortfall this year is going to be at 13.4% of GDP. So when we had the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, they came in and they did the same thing where they just injected money into the system, right? The quantitative easing, all that. They just created the money out of thin air and just put it into the economy. This was a good, well, I don't think it's a good thing, but if the government is going to do this, they've done studies where if the debt to GDP ratio is less than 90%, every month, every dollar that they inject to the economy, you get more than $1 back. So it's a positive investment, right? They take the money, even though it's debt. Debt is never a good thing for anybody. They put it into the economy and we actually get $1 back worth of economic output. So even though you're taking the debt out, technically the economy is growing, right? At a faster rate at which you're taking out the debt. So it's a net win for the economy. Now, unfortunately, we have a situation where the percentage of the debt to income ratio is about 130% plus. That's not including the unfunded liabilities like Social Security, for example. So we have a situation now where we take $1 in debt and we inject it into the economy, we actually get less than $1 back. So now it's a net negative. So now we're taking on a lot more debt and it's not growing the economy as fast anymore. And the rate at which we continue to do that, meaning the more debt we put in, the less output we get out. So now literally we're just shooting ourselves in the foot, essentially, which is not a good thing. In my opinion, they're doing it on purpose because I think they want to destroy the system and make things so bad that they want to put in that new world order agenda, government coin, and World Health Organization, all this stuff. Other than that, on Tuesday, the Reserve Bank of Australia decided to keep its interest rates the same at about 0.1%. They are, however, going to taper back the investment that they're making with their quantitative easing. Basically, they're just going to invest a little bit less, and they're starting to taper. They're starting to inject less money into the economy because we're starting to see a recovery there in Australia. U.S. mortgage applications fell 1.8% this week. According on Wednesday, the report came out from the Mortgage Bankers Association's lowest level since the beginning of 2020. So that inflation situation that I told you, where the prices of everything are exploding, that's starting to affect people because if you're paying 40% more for food, you don't exactly have the ability to go out and pay for, 25% or a deposit you need to make on your house. And that's on top of the fact that the prices of housing have been exploding as well. That's not good because the housing market is a big piece of the economy. Not big piece, but a relatively good chunk. Other than that, the Thursday Wells Fargo said that they're going to shut down all of their existing personal lines of credit. They're going to stop offering that service in the future. It looks to me that this is a bit of a red flag because obviously they don't want to offer that because it may be a risk with the kind of crisis financially that we're going to start coming over the next few years. U.S. Treasury yields sank for the fourth day on Thursday. This has to do obviously with a lot of people, again, as I told you guys in the beginning, getting their money out of these riskier assets and putting into the 10-year Treasury. The dollar doesn't have a very good long-term view because essentially, and I'm going to do a video on this for you about the dollar collapse. Right now, the federal government is paying, maybe a percent or two on their debt, but the actual government-reported inflation rate is about 5%. So we have a situation where they're borrowing money, let's call it 1%. They're borrowing money at 1%, but the inflation rate or the rate at which the dollar is devaluing every year now at a yearly level is 5%. So you literally are investing in something and losing 4% a year. That's the amount that the government is reporting. What I actually believe the inflation rate is about 30 or 40%. So less people are going to want to borrow the government money, and at record deficits, where are they going to find this money from? Most people overseas are going to go ahead to try to give the money to the U.S. That's how we normally finance our government, right? So we have a situation where the foreigners give us the money, they borrow us the money so we can keep the same standard of living. Well, if they're not getting the return on their investment because literally every dollar that they borrow to us is going to be worth less in the future, then why even borrow the money to the U.S. to begin with? Then what's going to happen is, and it actually happened this year in February, they're not going to borrow this money. They want to because they want a return on their investment. They don't want to borrow you money and lose it later, right? So then what the government's going to do is quantitative easing again, where they literally have to create the money and then borrow it to themselves, which is essentially what we're doing right now. So we're in this vicious cycle right now with the dollar, and it's not going to end well. Again, I think they're doing it on purpose. Go ahead and launch that government coin, digital dollar, digital euro, right? Other than that, we have, again, I told you guys in the beginning, the spread of the more deadly COVID, which is the Delta variant and other different kind of variants as well. This is obviously getting people nervous because that means we're not going to have the kind of recovery that we originally thought we were going to have. And then we have a lot of people around the world now. For example, Biden is announcing that they're going to go door to door asking you whether you got vaccinated or not. And so that basically means that not enough people are getting the vaccine, which means that the government isn't going to allow us to open everything. Or you can just go to Florida, for example, where everything is open and everything is peachy. Other than that, in economic news, the Eurozone June's Purchasing Managers Index, which is the PMI, showed that after the COVID-19 removed the restrictions there in Europe, business activity exploded because this number went up by the fastest rate in 15 years. On Monday, the German consumer sentiment hit its lowest since January. Now, this is not a good thing due to the fact that, remember that consumption is the biggest portion of the economy, and a lot of these more advanced economies, the US, Canada, most places in most places in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, most countries that are first world, let's say, or have been industrialized, they rely on consumers spending money for the economy. In the US, for example, the last number I checked, it was close to 70%, 70. So if the consumer index, the sentiment, and the fourth largest economy in the world in Europe, and essentially the economic engine of Europe, the consumer sentiment is going down, that means that less people are spending money, which isn't good for the economy. And then throw on top of that the lockdowns for COVID, not bueno long term. Other than that, Thursday weekly U.S. jobless claims report indicated an overall slowdown in job growth as well. So we have the situation now in Germany and Europe, which is, we're starting to kind of limp along, let's say, in Europe. And now in the U.S., the economy isn't necessarily doing better either. We had the increase in the unemployment rate, the participation rate, the percentage of people that are participating in the workforce, that's not going up either, because the government is continuing to give out this COVID stimulus. And so we're in a situation where things are not necessarily getting better. We're starting to move in the other direction now. Microsoft on Tuesday in corporate news exploded. Not exploded, but they went up by quite a bit, 4.69% after the government decided to cancel the Jedi contract. If you guys don't remember, this was a bit of a scandal that the government chose Microsoft over Amazon. So now they canceled the contract that they had with Microsoft, which means that Amazon has a chance to get part of that contract or maybe the contract. So they went up quite a bit. And in another piece of news as well, in meme stocks, there's a new one called B Square Corporate, which is a corporation, which basically is a computer software company, and their shares rose, skyrocketed 77% after they appeared on the Reddit Wall Street Bets board. So still going hard with the meme stocks. In trade news, China's exports are likely going to lose momentum in June as they're starting to have the virus outbreaks as well. So again, shutdowns in the factories, people aren't able to work as much, less products. Again, prices of things. You see how it kind of when you look at it, when you connect all the dots, how things aren't going to necessarily get better, especially when it comes into price. French champagne producers are angry over a new Russian law. If you guys didn't know, Champagne is a region in France where if they have the bubbly, the wine that has the bubbles in it, essentially, if you guys don't know what that is, if it comes from Champagne, France, they can call it champagne. They have it trademarked. But if it doesn't come from Champagne, France, they have to call it the sparkling wine, not champagne, because champagne now is a household name, right? And they own the trademark. And so now Russia is saying that they have to add the word sparkling wine, and obviously that might hurt their trademark, so they don't want to add that added. So there's a little bit of a fight there. The European Union is facing challenges to convince trading partners about the world's first carbon tax on imports, how it's fair and not unfair. They're saying that it's workable and necessary part of the bloc's attempt for the Green Revolution, as opposed to another protectionist tool in regards to Europe. One of the things that's really interesting about the Socialist Republic of the European Union is that they talk about saving the environment with a carbon tax, but they're planning on excluding private jets. So we have such a crisis in the environment that the rich people don't have to pay for it when they're the ones that are polluting the most with their private jets. You see these guys, right? They go to their environmental seminars and how we should protect the world, but they all arrive in their private jet. It's okay if they do it, but it's not okay if we do it. In technology, Square Inc., which is a payment processor very similar to PayPal, for example, somewhat similar to PayPal and Stripe, they're going to start making a hardware wallet for Bitcoin. This was announced before Senator Elizabeth Warren talked about the risks that people have for the crypto market and how it poses a lot of risk for consumers. This is actually what she said. In addition to that, in investment news, Didi, which is the Chinese Uber, crashed as much as 25% in the pre-market on Tuesday after the Chinese government announced they're going to start investigating the app and they're not going to allow new people to download it after they are going to review a cybersecurity of the company. Don't know if you guys have noticed how China has been starting to crack down quite a bit on their companies. Where is Jack Ma, for example, from Alibaba? Do you guys remember? Used to be a household name, always did interviews, now nowhere to be found. Other than that, political news, the Spain Central Bank, or Spain Central Government, I should say, proposing a national mobilization and security law that is stating that the next time that they have a health crisis, next time that they're having a health crisis, that they could temporarily seize government's private property and their rights for the betterment of everybody, obviously, because, you know, we all have to give up our freedoms for everybody else. Trump also announced in political news that he's suing Facebook, Twitter, and Mark Zuckerberg, Jack Dorsey, and Sundar Pichai for the censorship that should be protected by the Constitution. It's a class action lawsuit, which basically means that the private individuals, in addition to government agencies, are going to be able to join the suit. And on Friday, Taliban officials in Afghanistan are stating that after the United States government, or I should say military, has left the country, that they supposedly have taken control of 85% of the country, while the government is saying that, no, it's not true, it's just hearsay. In international events, the global cases of COVID have reached 184 million cases worldwide, with Indonesia and Russia with the highest. One-day death tolls actually reach records. Global deaths are near 4 million. U.S. is still number one at about 621,000. Brazil is over 500,000, while India is starting to go up quite a bit at 400,000. And COVID-19 is now the fourth largest leading cause of death in the world. In France, mandatory vaccines are now being considered by the government due to the fact that the rollout of the vaccines haven't been as promising as they thought that it would. Olympics organizers in Japan are starting to change things as well with the increasing cases, in addition to the situation where the variants are starting to take over. And so now they're not going to allow any spectators in the actual events, and they're going to start shutting things down as well. Officials in Australia, South Africa, and Asia, as I told you guys in the beginning of the video, they're starting curfews in addition to lockdowns due to the Delta variant. And in addition to that, Lithuania began building a 550-kilometer, 320-mile razor wire barrier with their border in Belarus because they're accusing Belarus of flying migrants abroad illegally from the EU, from Africa, and also the Middle East, as they found quite a bit of hundreds of migrants crossing the border that are actually from Iraq. And in unusual facts this week, unprecedented heat wave in the northwest in the United States, in addition to Canada. Lytton, which is if you get any Canadians watching, let me know how I'm saying it right, or how I should say it right. I should say June 29th hit an all-time record of heat in Canada at about 48 degrees Celsius, or about 119 degrees Fahrenheit, only to break the next day with a new record of 121 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 49 degrees Celsius. So I don't know if you guys are noticing, and at the end of these videos, I always talk about some of these natural disasters because they're not really reporting it on the news anymore. But we have, for example, Tropical Storm Elsa inundated the subways in New York City, in addition to other cities. We have 15 million residents without electricity in Central America. Definitely be able to pay with Bitcoin without electricity, right? And in the U.S. now, we have not only after the droughts, after the dryness and the heat because of we have the dryness because of the heat, said that backwards. We have the droughts that came, then we have the unscorching, the heat is just killing everything. Now we have a huge infestation of grasshoppers that are going to eat the rest of the crop. So we're probably going to have quite a bit of a situation with food shortages. So you should probably stock up. The preppers may have been right on this one, because if it wasn't killed by the drought because of the lack of water or because of the heat, now the grasshoppers are going to come and eat everything. In hailstorm, there's a hailstorm in Mexico that basically turned the town into raging rivers, the streets there in Mexico. Three Gorges Dam, 27 provinces, only missing 7, but 27 provinces are announcing an emergency because of the climate and the rain, which are basically the streams and rivers that feed into the Three Gorges Dam. Remember, this is the largest dam in the world, and they already had emergency last year, so now this is going to cause maybe an even bigger emergency if that dam actually ever goes. And in Canada, they had 710,000 lightning strikes in a span of 15 hours, which is actually unprecedented there as well. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next week.